Okay, hello and welcome to the Parsha class. We're starting Baruch H-Shem, the next Sefer Bamidbar with Parshat Bamidbar. It's called the Book of Numbers in English, popularly, and that's not a coincidence. There's a lot of counting. There are a lot of numbers in the Parsha, in the entire Sefer. In fact, several times the Jewish people will be counted, and that's part of the summary, the quick the nutshell version of the Parsha is that each tribe, except for Levi, is counted, and the numbers come out to 603,550 adult males between the ages of 20 to 60. So conservative estimates would probably put the total number of people, in other words, men younger than 20 and older than 60, and all of the women who weren't counted, to altogether is probably something like 3 million people, and that's how many people there were at this point in our Jewish history. The Levium are not counted; they're counted separately as tribes, as three separate families, and they are and they're also counted from a different age. They're counted from the age of 30 days and up. And their total is 22,300, which is very similar to the number of also the firstborns of the other Jewish people are counted. There's 22,000 of them, and they're supposed to, the Levium, take over the job, as we're going to talk about, of the firstborns. So there's going to be a discrepancy of a good 300 people. So what are we going to do? So there was a whole lottery that was done, that was performed, that basically made sure that there wouldn't be, that these 300 people were accounted for, and their jobs were not in the running for replacement. They were not sent to India or anywhere else. Okay, so that being said, we're going to start looking at deeper parts of the Parsha. Of course, we can't learn the entire Parsha in too much detail, as much as we'd love to. But if you look at previous years, we have a good at least two other classes, 2 hours worth of Parsha classes from previous years that will allow you to see other thoughts here that we learned in previous years. Now, the source sheet today, right there, good. Okay, we're going to start with the first verse and see if we can gain some important ideas from the various commentaries that we shall look at. First verse, beginning of the Parsha, beginning of the Sefer, says, V'yidaber Hashem el Moshe b'midbar Sinai be'ohel moed be'echad l'chodesh hasheni b'shana hashenit l'tzeitam me'eretz Mitzrayim lemor. Hashem spoke to Moshe at the wilderness of Sinai, and in the Ohel Moed, in the tent of meeting, whatever that is, l'chodesh hasheni, in the second month, b'shana hashenit, in the second year of what? Let's say Tam Eretz Mitzrayim Lemor, the time that they left Egypt. Asks Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky and Emet Yaakov. He says they're going to be counted. The Jewish people are going to be counted. They're going to be counted by tribe, by family. And if you look at it carefully, Kinira, Meseder Ashvatim, Shemana et Gad acher Reuven v'Shimon. God is counted after Reuven and Shimon. Hayab Yuchud kedei l'sader et inyan hadagalim. So that's how they made these encampments. There were basically 4 groups. The 12 tribes were broken up into 4 groups, 3 tribes each, and together they traveled that way through the wilderness, to the Midbar. And that's part of the reason for the count here, is to put them in the right place, to know where they are in this procession, in this grouping. And he continues, he says, "L'chora timur." It's really a wonder. Allah tikav kishiyatsu b'nei Yisrael b'Mitzrayim yitzeb b'nei Yisrael al tzavotam. They left Mitzrayim. They went in a group. They're already group. It said all the way back in Shemot in the 14th chapter. B'nei Yisrael yotzim biyad ramah. They came out, with their hands upraised. They were already traveling as a group. Okay, and it says also Chamisha b'nei Yisrael, the Chamushim, that they were armed, they were set. All right, Shelo Yatsu Kavadim, they didn't come out as slaves, they came out like a free people. And then he says, V'amai then, and then why? Hamitunu, the Sadet had the Golem, Shanat Mima Adma. So why wait a whole year? This is the second month in the second year, a whole year and a month after they left Mitzrayim that they're being organized. They were already going. If you wanted to organize them then. Or don't organize them at all. They seem pretty set. They're already going. So there has to be something else going on. And as usual, he wants the emet. This is why it's called emet liYaakov. Right? So what's the truth? So it says, Ela shebe'emet, in truth, inyan hadagalem l'chora hu pirud halavavot. Really, the whole point of separating the different tribes wasn't to separate them as like distinct groups, or like they're not related to each other. It's the other way around. Their hearts, their personalities were already different. Each one of these tribes is going to have its own symbol, its own color, its own flag. So you might think they're supposed to be different than each other. Each one of the, right, there's different shapes on each flag. Hello, Zeh, Tzion, Kikol Shevet Veshevet, Yesh Lo, Tikuna Osh Efa Miyuchadet. Each one of the tribes had something unique about it. Miteres ha'echad shona memiteres ha'sheni, and it was obviously different from another tribe. It had a different strength, a different personality. And you say ki lechora ha'degalim garmu lepirud halavavat. And it would seem then that what these flags, what these groupings were meant to do was to split up the families, to split up the tribes. But they all had the same direction. They all had the same mirkaz. They had one center, and the center was the Mishkan, the holiness of the traveling tabernacle that we've spoken about in so many parsha classes. Have all the symbolism, all the inspiration that was supposed to come from that Mishkan. Now that it's built, it wasn't built before. Now we have a Mishkan. All of these groupings surrounded the Mishkan. And that's why the Mishkan was in the middle. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. Ve'ein zeh goram lifrud ela kol echad omed al mishmarto v'miyuchadet lo ve'ein kan shum pirud. It wasn't that they were being split up. It was that their own unique personalities were being honed in on so that they can use their strengths and their personalities for their common goal that they all share, which is the holiness of the Mishkan. Now that they had a Mishkan in between them, their separate personalities, their unique character traits, and all of that wasn't going to split them up because they could all use all of their own unique strengths for the same goal. That's what the Jewish people are for. That's the entire crux of how we're supposed to work in this world, is by using each one of our own unique strengths. Some people are good at, business. Some people are good at fundraising. Some people are good at cooking. Whatever your strength is, you can use it somehow for the benefit of the Jewish people or for the benefit of the world. And until we had a Mishkan in between us, Mishkan, to focus all that energy towards, all we had was these very separate talents. We had no real goal to focus these talents on. And then he continues, Kamo v'adon, the same thing with every person. We've got ears to hear, we've got eyes to see. Each one, it doesn't mean that the ears don't want the eyes to work, right? God forbid. Right? The eyes don't have any, don't begrudge the nose, right? They're all working. They all have their own talent set, right? And you're going to use their talents for the one goal of preserving and protecting the body. That's the exact same thing, but you need a body to do that. So the first thing you need is a goal. You need a central thing. Now, this is, I promised myself I wouldn't go on a rant about this, but this is one of the problems that the Jewish community at large has been struggling with for so many years. Like, what makes us a Jewish community? What should we do? What kind of unifying event can we have? And the answer is Mishkan. Mishkan, Torah, that's the holiday that we're celebrating next week of Shavuot. If we have a goal, if we have a central goal for all Jewish communities to focus on, each one of the unique communities can use their unique talents to progress that goal, to spread more Torah in the world, to make the world a more godly place. And that's why he continues, and that's why I had to wait till the second month, in the second year after leaving Mitzrayim, even though we were already a group, and even though we could already be organized and walk together, we needed a goal. We needed a central focus to use all of our talents, and otherwise, what's the point? So that's very fundamental, Rabbi Yaakov right there, and why the Galim were necessary, why this had to happen when it happened, and why indeed the Jewish people are both unique and similar. One of the questions I sent out in the email that this question deals with is, are the Jews supposed to be unique, or are they supposed to be similar? And the answer is yes. They're supposed to be both. They're supposed to have unique skills and talents. They're supposed to hone them in to a similar goal, the same goal of progressing Torah. All right, so that was chapter 1, verse 1. We're going to go skip now to the next chapter, chapter 2, verse 3. Perek Bet, Pasuk Gimel. And this is where the Torah is already talking about the counting and where the different groups were. V'achonim kedmem Mizracha degel machane Yehuda etzivotam v'nasi livnei Yehuda Nachshon ben Aminadav. So the front, the kedma, the front, the Mizracha, the east, was the camp of Yehuda, and the prince of the tribe of Yehuda is this amazing person by the name of Nachshon ben Aminadav. The Gemara in Sota tells us stories about what a great person he was, brave, etc. Walking into the, at least one opinion of how he walked into the Yam Suf before it even split. He was so confident in the salvation of Hashem. But that's not our goal right now. Right now, we're going to look at a Rashi. A simple Rashi. How complicated can that be? Rashi wants to know if we're, as usual, thinking of the east of the compass, as the front, right? And indeed, if you're going from Egypt to Israel, you're going from west to east, right? Or maybe I'm not sure how the camera is going to work, but either way, going from west to east. So if you're walking east, what's the front? The front is east. So Rashi wants to know then, Kedma, the front, Lefanim. That means the Kedma means Lefanim. Hakuri Kedem, and it's called Kedem because that's what Kedem means. Kedem means front, right? Ve'ezezu ruach mizrachit, and what is the east? Yeah. So what is east? The east is the Mizrach, right? Of Karu Achor, and then the west is called the back. Why? Because it's like the back of the world. The everything's facing east. East is the front, west is the back. So it says in Rashi. And ordinarily you would just go, okay, so that's the front, that's the back. It kind of seems random, and it seems like it's been decided by some otherworldly power, and we can just go on from there and not learn any lessons from that. But that's not how the Gur Aryeh operates, right? The Gur Aryeh, the Maharal, Prague, wrote a commentary on Rashi called the Gur Aryeh, and he says that's I'm not quite satisfied with this. He says, "Rotzu lomer ki kadma mizracha shekatuv kafel lashon." He says the language is a little unclear here. Hakatuv meforesh dvarav ba'atzmo, v'omer kedma lifnim v'karui kedem. So he's putting in some words in Rashi to clarify exactly what Rashi's question is. What is kedma? Kedma means the front. Mizracha means the east. Sounds like it's redundant. In other words, why do you have to tell me the east is the front if, as Rashi points out, it's rather clear? So is the verse telling, the verse teaching you which way is front, which way is back? So Hevi Rashi Raya Mizrach Nikra Kedem Sharei Marav Shehu Nochach Mizrach Nikra Achor. So Achor is back. It seems to imply that therefore Mizrach is always in the back, and so it's basically just a proof. It chayav al hamizrach shenikra kedem. So the Marav is always called the back, and then that obviously then the Mizrach is called the front. Ve'inu maybe raya shekadma nikra Mizrach. For me, it doesn't really seem that that's a proof that kedem means east. Sharei kan ksuva perush kedma mizracha. The verse says explicitly the front east. So that sounds like it's not really a proof. Then you have to tell me, if you have to be explicit about the fact that east is the front. That means sometimes maybe east isn't the front, and sometimes it is. Here it is. That means maybe elsewhere it isn't. And it says in Bereshit similarly. The Shalosh is Hevi Raya ki kadma nikra mizrach ina H-Shem be'etzem kamur tzafun v'darom. It's all it's telling me is that it's not north and south. Vaya kasha ki ein derech hakatuv levar sham be'etzem. The verse doesn't prove itself. Ki sham be'etzem hu shemo kavua. Lo you do it just because like I said, just because at this point the east is front. That doesn't mean that always east will be front. Maybe the other way around. The fichach, therefore, hevi raya shamarav karu achor l'shem tor shalo ki kein kedem sham toru shem toru. Asher sham hator amar katuv kedma lifnim nikrim kach v'shem hator ki hu ze nikra kach. All right, so. Again, the question that he's asking is, if east, in this case, is very explicitly east is the front, how does that prove that east is always front? Yeah. So he says, so how do you know that it's that the east is the front of in all sides? Natan במזרח שהוא גם כן קדם. כמו שנתן לו בשם כבוד זה להיות בצד אשר הוא קדם. So kedem doesn't mean front. Kedem means the most respected, the most honored. And wherever kedem is used, it means, it implies that that's a position of honor, a position of respect. Kain natan lo b'ma she'ala tchila. Katav mizracha or kedma bilchud. If it only said east or front alone, lo have yaflinan. You wouldn't have known what we're talking about. It wouldn't have been a proof. Aval hashta, now that it says katav lifnim kruim kedem, miloshen tchila kadima elfinan. So therefore, kedem mizracha is not being redundant in any sense of the word. It's not just telling you that it's east, and it's not just telling you that it's front. It's telling you that east means front. East always means front. And just like Yehuda is the king and deserves the honor of being the leader, right? Yehuda is the tribe we're talking about. So therefore, he is placed kadma. He is kedem. He is in position of respect, and he is being placed in the east, which makes the east a place of respect. It's worth noting that in the Gevurat H-Shem, the Maharal writes further about this concept of east and east and west and what it represents. The east represents creation because if you think about it, you don't have to think about it too hard. When you think of east, how do you know it's east? You know, because that's where the sun rises. Sun rises in the east. And it feels like a new day. It's like a creation all over again every morning when you see the sunrise. And that beginning, that newness, that is what's considered leadership. That's what starts off the day. That's what starts off our lives. Well, that's what started off creation. That same idea. And the newness that we experience in our lives, that is represented by the word Mizrach, right? The east. And if you don't, if you what's a nice way to say this? You might have had a terrible day yesterday. When you wake up in the morning, the attitude should be, and it often is, not that you should forget about what happened yesterday, but that today is a new day. Today is a new opportunity, and that newness is exactly what is the center of Jewish leadership. That sort of positivity, that sort of sorry, having technical difficulties here. Right, that sort of positive attitude, that sort of optimism, is realism. Actually, it's how a person should look at the day. We have lots of opportunities, and that's how we start. That's how we start our day. That's how we start our year, always looking to the east. And that's where we put our leaders, because that's that positivity that we need to get us through, especially the more seemingly difficult times that we have. All right, let's skip to chapter 2, verse 17. So a whole 14 verses later, where we're going to now mention the fact, as we said before, that the Ol Moed is traveling with, obviously, the Mishkan is traveling with the Jewish people. Says the verse, V'nisa Ol Moed machane levim b'toch hamachanot kasher yachanu ken yisau ish al yado hadiglehem. So amongst the groupings of the Jewish people that were traveling, that we've spoken about already, right in the middle is the Mishkan, bitoch machanot. It's right there in between of the machanot, and the Levium were carrying it. Obviously, they were transporting the parts, as we've said before in previous parshot, how it was broken down and how it was carried. Just as they camped, that's how they also moved in the same groupings. Ish al yado lediglehem. Each person according to their flag. The Chavetz Chaim al Torah has one comment on this entire parsha Bamidbar. Right? This comment here is the only comment he has on Bamidbar. So on this verse. Now, just so you know, in case I haven't said it in previous classes, and even if I did, it's good to review. The Chavetz Chaim al Torah is not by the Chavetz Chaim. I mean, it's his ideas, but it was not written down in his lifetime. He wrote lots of books, but this is not one of them. This book was written actually by his son, by his son-in-law, but it was not written by the Chavetz Chaim himself. So it says, Mikeilan she'atorah munachet ba'aron she'ba'ohel moed. The Torah was resting in the ark that was in the Ohel Moed. Therefore, tzarech ha'ohel moed liyo tamid bitoch machanot. That because of that, since it was there, since the Torah is the essence of what everything symbolizes, it had to be in the center of everything. Bitoch. He's focusing on that word. Be'emtza, right smack in the middle. Lo karo biyoter echad, lo rachok biyoter me'asheni. Not any closer to any tribe or any grouping, not any further from any tribe or any grouping. Right there, right equidistant to everybody. Just like the bima. Just like the bima, the table on which the Torah is read should be in the middle of a shul. That's the ideal proportions or design of a synagogue. So too, Kamosha Eitz Hachayim Haya the Nota Betoch Hagan, just like the tree of life was right in is described as being in the middle of the garden, which means it's no further from you than it is from me. Kitar Gumo Mitziut Ginta, it's right there in the middle, right in the center. Gam HaTorah Hi Eitz Hachayim. So too, the Torah is the Eitz HaChaim. It is the thing that keeps us together. V'akol trichim v'hit raches misaviva v'hi mitoch v'ita sorry, hard for me to read this. I believe it on the screen. Commander Amar Kin Teva He Mahalchin. So this is obviously this is only according to the opinion that they journeyed in a teva shape, in a box shape. There are other opinions about how they journeyed, whether it was a line or a box. But so if they were traveling in a box shape, this drasha makes a lot of sense. If they're traveling in a line, obviously this wouldn't work. So I don't know how they would. I'm not exactly sure how we would deal with the word bitoch in that case. But I guess it was right in the middle of everybody, but not equidistant to everybody. V'yan ki totzod chaim mehalev. Life comes from the heart. Now, the most important organ in your body is your heart. It keeps pumping blood. And where is it? The heart is in the middle of the body, more or less. And it sends blood. And we call the blood, we call that the essence of life, right? V'chol every haguf b'shava, each body part is equally placed close to the heart, and everything draws its life from it. Mikol mishmar tzorech lakach, and that's how and that's how we're instructed. That's why we're instructed to guard our hearts, as it says in Mishlei Perek, chapter 4, verse 23. It says, more than you guard anything, protect your heart. Yeah, he says a similar idea in several other places, but essentially, the lesson we should get from the Chafetz Chaim, and why it was worth him to have a comment just on this, of all the verses, just this verse alone in the entire parsha, the important lesson that I think we can all gain from is the fact that, again, just as we said before, the Torah is the heart of the Jewish people. If you want Judaism to survive, if you want the numbers, the demographics that we're seeing in the parsha, if you want them to keep growing, the only way for that to happen is through Torah. There's more to say on that subject. I think we'll leave it for the drashot on Shabbat, if that's okay. But I think from the class anyway, what we can gain so far, to the takeaway from this is that the idea that some people have of Torah is for that community, Torah is for that individual, Torah is for the rabbi or something like that. That's ridiculous. Torah is for everybody. Torah is not any closer to me than it is to you. It's not any closer to one community than it is for another. Everybody has a chelik in Torah. Everybody has a portion of Torah, and so it says in Pirkei Avot, and everybody needs to find a way to get the most they can out of it to their own benefit. All right, now let's look. Okay. Okay, Baruch Hashem. Okay. Okay, we have time for a few more insights, I think. Let's look at the next parak. Okay, first two verses of Parak Gimel, chapter 3, verses 1 and 2, Bamidbar. And this is the part where they start talking about the Torah starts talking about the counting of the Levium. As I said, they were not counted together with the Jewish people; they were counted separately. Aron, Moshe, B'yom Diber Hashem El Moshe B'Har Sinai. These are the countings of the children of Aron and Moshe on the day that Hashem spoke to Moshe at Har Sinai. And this is this counting. Elishmot b'nei Aron, and these are the sons of Aron, Bechor, Nadav, Avihu, his firstborn Nadav, and Avihu, Elazar, V'Tamar, those four. Classic question is, and I have a feeling we've dealt with this before, but I couldn't find it in my notes. Actually, let me just double check. Okay, I think we may have done this before. No, doesn't look like it. Okay, never mind. So let's talk about it then. Important idea. Yeah. Baruch Hashem. Okay. The question is, if you look at it carefully, whose genealogy are we about to see? Whose progeny are we about to list? Aron. These are the sons of Aron and Moshe. Moshe? What's he got to do with this? He's not in the family. Moshe has his own family. Why does he have to be mentioned when we're mentioning Aaron's family? So that's the question. It's a classic question. So classic that Rabbeinu Bachai deals with it in his commentary. And it says, very simple words. Hizkir Moshe. Moshe is mentioned. Why? Lefi shelamdam Torah. He taught them Torah. He taught the sons of Aaron Torah. Ki talmidav shel Adam, hein toldotav v'kriyot. The students of a teacher are his progeny. They are his children. Besides the many, many examples we have in Jewish history of rabbis, Rosh Yeshiva, who didn't have children of their own biologically, and they and the Rebbetzin, usually what they did instead was they more or less adopted their yeshiva-like. They adopted the boys and men of the yeshiva, of the kollel, and their families became their families. You give to whomever you can give to. If you can't have children naturally, so you adopt. We talk about this in the Jewish life cycles class last year. Right? There should be no stigma attached to adoption. Nothing wrong with it at all. It's a beautiful thing. The Jewish people, we have a history of it. Besides, of course, the sefer we're about to see with Naomi and Ruth. Besides Mordechai and Esther, we have all of the children of the people who died in Mitzrayim. All of the Jewish people who died in Mitzrayim. Their children had to be adopted by the rest. All of that. There's much history to this. But besides that, even if you do have your own children, you giving Torah to somebody else, it's again, the Torah is a common theme in this parsha. It's not a coincidence that this is the parsha before Shavuot, right? You give Torah to somebody else, they're yours now. They're your children now. What is children? What's the whole point of children? Children is to spread Torah, right? The chinuch habanim is the main mitzvah. Is I don't know, main mitzvah. It is part and parcel of having children. Is the ability to teach these children Torah, to spread your Torah to them, so that they will spread it to the next generation. Continuation of Judaism, the continuation of Torah, is based on this idea. That's obvious. So therefore, when you're Vayu Toldot Aron, the generations of Aron, Behulda Toldot Moshe, the Talmud Torah, the generations of Aron in their births, in their biology, are also the children of Moshe in their studying of Torah, in his teaching of Torah. And that's why Har Sinai is being mentioned in this verse, because that's where Torah was given. It's such a pashut thing when you look at the verse again. Ela told it Aron and Moshe, B'yom diber Hashem el Moshe b'Har Sinai. These are the generations of Aron and Moshe on the day that Hashem spoke to Moshe at Har Sinai. What was Har Sinai? Har Sinai was Torah. You can see Rabbeinu Bachai's commentary on Pirkei Avot, the first Mishnah. He says basically the same thing. Har Sinai isn't just a place, an event. Har Sinai is the giving of Torah from Hashem to Moshe. That's what Sinai means, according to Rabbeinu Bachai. And therefore, mentioning that in this verse is completely irrelevant, except for the fact that we're talking about Torah. If we're talking about Torah, we're talking about the spreading of Torah from Hashem to Moshe. Then, of course, we're going to talk about the children of Aaron are the product of Moshe and his Torah. That's the idea here, and that's the Rabbeinu Bachai. Baruch Hashem, we have I think we have time for a few more ideas. Let's see if they're also Torah related, huh? Shall we? All right, so that's Rabbeinu Bachai. I have the whole comment there on that verse, even though it's only the first part that we focused on today. Maybe we'll deal with other parts in future years. But let's skip to chapter 3, verse 13, where we deal with the subject we spoke about earlier in the class, and that is that we need to take away the jobs, need to outsource the jobs from the firstborn and give them to the Levium. Why? Because the firstborns, as we'll see, were nikshal, they sinned, the sin of the golden calf, and the Levium did not. So therefore, their reward, the reward of the Levium for not participating in the sin of the golden calf, is that they took over the jobs that really the firstborn of each family was supposed to do. There's sort of an idea like that still in Judaism, actually in other religions as well, that the firstborn son of every family is sort of supposed to be the educated one, the religious one, who's supposed to then bring that back to the family and spread Torah again to the rest of the family. So that's there's still an idea like that. There's still religions where the firstborn is the priest who goes off and learns in the seminary or something and comes back and it's supposed to spread that knowledge to the other siblings. Can't send everybody, obviously. So that was the idea. So says the verse, Ki li kol bechor b'yom hakoti kol bechor be'eretz Mitzrayim. Each firstborn is really mine, says Hashem. I own them. Why? Because I saved them from Mitzrayim. Saved them? Is he not going to? And we owe him that he didn't kill us? Why should we have been killed? Mitzrayim, hikdashti li kol bechor b'Yisrael, and I've made holy, I've sanctified the firstborn of everybody in Israel. Me'adam ad behema, from man to animal. Li you ani Hashem, they're all mine, I am Hashem. And the language here is intense. Hashem is basically saying, I own you, and I've made you holy. So all you firstborns, you're all mine. Man, animal, they're all mine. Now, we know when it comes to an animal, the bechor, the firstborn animal of every animal owned by a Jew, is supposed to be somehow sanctified, right? They're not supposed to be used in work. They're supposed to be brought as a gift in Beit HaMikdash. How does that work for people, right? So let's go back to the 16th century Italy for the Sforno's commentary here. So he says, Mikedem yeh avoda b'chorot. So really there was supposed to be work for the firstborns. And then the connection to Mitzrayim is Amnam b'makad b'chorot, in the plague of the firstborn, sheyu ha-b'chorot roim lianash b'avod hador. Really, because that generation of people wasn't the greatest generation, right? The Jews and non-Jews equally. The Jewish people weren't so great at that time. They were on the 49th level of Tuma, whatever that means. And they really technically deserved death at that point. But they were saved because Hashem said he would save them. And because he continues, mipnei sheyutam hayoter nibadim v'yotam bilti roim ha'atzel memakat medina u'me'inyan pen tesaper b'avon ha'ir. Really, they deserve to die because the Jewish people deserved punishment. They weren't so great, and they were the firstborn, so they were honored. They were the respected members of the family. They should have taken the brunt of the punishment. But nevertheless, Hashem saved them. Right? And ani hitzaltim b'ma shehikdashtim li b'inyan sheyu asurim lit'asek b'avodat hedyot. I sanctified them for me. I made them holy, and therefore I didn't kill them. But also, they're not supposed to do avodat hedyot. They're not supposed to do simple work. They're supposed to be excused from common laborers. They're not the peasants, right? These are the firstborns. They should be highly respected members of the society, right? Kimishpat kolam hektish. Just like anything that's hektish, anything that's sanctified, just like we said about the firstborn animals aren't supposed to be worked, so too the firstborn humans should not be worked. Kimishpat kol hektish ayutzim b'chulin amru kol b'chor benacha tifta lo b'shvil zeh epadyon. Oh, sorry, did I skip something? Sorry. Shehu asur begizav of odad leman you mutarim bezeh is rahachtim pidyon. So if you now in order, just like an animal isn't supposed to be worked, and if they've been made hektish, if they've somehow been sanctified, if I promised an animal to the Beit HaMikdash, I can't now work it. So too, these firstborn humans, these firstborn of each family, should also not be worked, should be excused from non-religious matters. He continues. Lo b'shvil zeh hapidyon hayu pturim min ha'avoda ve'achshav shechato ma'atzim lekachti levim tachtehem lepidyon hayu li halevim la'avoda. So if you did want to work this a hektish thing, it needed to be unsanctified, and by to unsanctify something, you have to get a replacement. So the replacement for these people, these firstborns, were the Levium. The Levium took their place, and now they can do other work. That was the idea here. It's a big chiddush, by the way, what he's saying. He's saying something that nobody else has said yet, and that is that really the firstborns deserve to die, and they were sanctified, and that's how their lives were saved. And by sanctifying them, it's not just a word, it's not just a stamp on their forehead, sanctified. It means something. It means they're excused from normal, everyday, common labor. That being the case, we have another question now. And for this question, we're going to fast forward to a contemporary writer, Rav Moshe Sternbach Shlita. He writes in Tam V'dat. He writes on this verse, "Besforno mechadesh de keshechaber Hakadosh Baruch de keshebachar Hakadosh Baruch Hu habechorot b'Mitzrayim." When Hashem chose the firstborns in Egypt, Nesru as lavodat hedyot, and he forbade them to do common labor. Bedinam and their laws. So they're not allowed to be sheared, right? They're not allowed to be worked, just like any other kind of hektish. They needed some sort of an exchange, as we said, and that was the Levium. And they needed that kind of they needed that because they had sinned. They'd done the mistake of the golden calf, and therefore they were punished that way by losing this status, and that status needed to be transferred to the Levium. All right, that's a sforno we already know so well because we already studied that. So let's see what he says about that. Nira Kedushas haLevim yetera min haBechorot. Wait a second there. But the holiness of Levim is greater than the Bechorot. Kishe haBechorim lo nivcharu keshachar avodatam. Itach haLevim nivcharu b'shever shelo avdu la'egel. So the question is, how can it be that the Levim are taking the place of these firstborn? And why are they being chosen as opposed to somebody else? Levim, because they didn't serve the golden calf. So shouldn't they have a higher status? A higher status thing doesn't take the place of a lower status thing. So how is it that we're choosing Levim who should be on a higher level? They didn't sin as the golden calf. And they're the substitutes? No. That's not how that works. The greater teacher isn't the substitute. No offense to substitutes out there. I used to be one. Right? The Efshar Shalahaske Dvarim Alpi Yidei Divrei Hagon Hakadosh Baal Be'er Mayim Chaim. Zecher Tzadok Livracha. So the author of the Be'er Mayim Chaim writes Shehizbir Ki Kedushas Shabbat Na'ala Yoter Miyom HaKippurim. You can learn something from the fact that the holiness of Shabbat is greater than the holiness of Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur nitztivinu lehamena me'agune olam hazeh achila shtiya rechitza. Now, right? So, what do you have to do on Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur, you don't eat, you don't drink. It's you don't bathe, you don't wear leather shoes. So, Yom Kippur is a very, very highly, very holy thing. And Umad Zod b'Shabbat Hutru Elu, and on Shabbat you can do all those things. B'tichach Yetera Shabbat, and still Shabbat is greater. So fewer restrictions. Now let me get this straight. Shabbat is holier than Yom Kippur, even though Shabbat is a lot easier, a lot more pleasant. Right? The Fichach Yetera Shabbat Mitzvah Aleinu Lehit Anog Kadesh et Hayom Mitoch Gashmiut. It's the other way around. Shabbat is a day of Gashmiut. You're eating, you're drinking, you're having a good time. You can eat extra sweets. You don't count your calories. It's the opposite of Yom Kippur. And it's holier? How does that work? Fichach HaShabbat Shehi Ki Kodesh Kadashim Ma'alta Gedola Ma'od. It's such a great and holy thing, the fact that we're enjoying Hashem, enjoying holiness, while participating in Gashmut, in physicality. V'nira shezehu hagader kedushat bechorot. And this is the geder. This is the rule. This is what we're learning about the holiness of the firstborn. Shenit kadshu beofen v'nesru be'avodat hedyot. So even though something is holy and it's not being worked like Yom Kippur, aval haLevim davka began me'altam hayetera lo nitgash nit kadshu kehakodesh eladinam kchulen tzrichim lehekdesh yemehem be'avodat Hashem. So too is Shabbat, a much holier thing because you can enjoy it physically. So too the Levim are a holy people, not because they can't do regular work, but because they can. It's the exact opposite. It's because they can do these things. It's because they're open to being physical in the world and still be holy. That's what shows their great holiness. Now, we might be a little bit over time, but I think we need to see this Kitzur Bal Haturim. And it's the reason why is because in every class, I'd like to at least try to focus on a little bit. I don't want to overwhelm anybody with anything like this, but it's important to see that there's grammatical inconsistencies in the Torah that are worth looking at, because there's some sort of message being made, and it's not something that can be translated easily. So you need a class. You need to see it inside to really appreciate some of these things. So in chapter 3, verse 38, where it talks about who was camped in this eastern front part that we talked about earlier. Mishkan, people who were camped in the front of the Mishkan, Kedma in the front, Lifnei Ol Moed, by the Ol Moed, Mizrach, again, the highly respected front part, the eastern side. Moshe of Aron, there was Moshe, there was Aron of Anav and his sons. Shomrim Mishmeret HaMikdash, they guarded the holiness of the Mikdash. Mishmeret Bnei Israel, V'azar Kara of Yumat, and they made sure that anybody who was not from the Levium, not from the group that's tasked with this job, anybody who got close to the Mishkan would die. Would they kill them? Would H-Shem kill him? Whichever way, they tried to make sure that wouldn't happen, that nobody would have to be punished. That was their job. Now, that's not what I wanted to focus on today. What I wanted to point out is, if you look carefully, you'll see, and this has to do with Trop. So, V'achonim lifnei hamishkan came out of lifnei Ol Moed Mizracha, Moshe, said Moshe, V'aron uvanav shomrim mishmeret hamikdash mishmer b'nei Israel azar hakarev yumat. So there's a psik, if you see it here in the source sheet, between the word Moshe and Aron. So again, in translation, this doesn't seem to make any difference. So let me try to say this the way it's meant to be read in the Torah, right? Camped in front of the Mishkan on the east side, in front of the Ol Moed on the east, was Moshe, and Aaron and his sons were guarding the etc. etc. Right. So it seems like there's a split, and there has to be a reason for this. Now, in any translation, let's look at even Safari's translation here for a moment. Those who were to camp before the tabernacle in front, before the tent of meeting on the east, were Moshe and Aaron and his sons. That's not how the Baal HaTurim would translate this. Let's look at the Baal HaTurim. And this is exactly why, I don't know if you were following the news, but yesterday a certain codex, the Sassoon Codex Sassoon, was sold by in auction to an Israeli museum of Torah subjects, and that museum bought this codex for $33.5 million. It is one of the oldest Torah books around, and it was sold for a huge amount, as you can see. And it was for reasons like this that such a thing is significant, because that codex has this psik as well, and that's how we know this psik belongs in the Torah. Now remember, Torah is written without these things, without a psik, without this line. But the meaning changes without it. So we need to know that it's, at least masoretically, in our tradition, that it's there. So what does it say? Says the Baal HaTurim, the Kitzur Baal HaTurim says, Yesh psik bein Moshe v'Aaron. There is this line, this psik between Moshe and Aaron. Lo Omar, to tell you, Moshe b'makom echad levad. Moshe was in one place alone. Aron b'makom acher levad. And Avraham and Aron and his sons were in another place alone. In other words, let's retranslate this verse. Not the way Sefaria did, but the way we do now with Kitzur Balaturim, based on this psik. So those who were to camp before the tabernacle in front, before the tent of meeting on the east, were Moshe, period, semicolon, dash, or whatever. And then you'd have to say the next part of the sentence, and Aaron and his sons were attending to the duties of the sanctuary. You see how that works? Now, you can't say that they were camped on the east of the tabernacle, Moshe and Aaron and his sons. That's not what it says. It says, Mishkan, Kedma, Lifnei, Oel Moed, Mizracha, Moshe. V'Aaron v'anav, Shomri Mishmeret HaMikdash. That psik means something. That psik means that there's a split. And that split is significant. And that we can't understand Torah properly if we're not going to look at the Masorah, our tradition, that was passed down. And that's what we've been talking about this entire class. The Masorah that's been passed down from teacher to student, that Masorah that was taught from Moshe to Aaron's sons, that Masorah that we centered our energies and our the entire formation of the Jewish people was surrounding this Mishkan. And that Torah that was in the Oral Moed, that was in the Aron and the Oral Moed, that was equidistant to every single Jew. That's the thing that we're spreading from generation to generation, and that's what's going to keep the numbers of the Jewish people great and awesome until the coming of Mashiach, B'imheira v'yameinu. Thank you for listening, and have a Shabbat Shalom.